Calvin T. Mann, leading Emmy, served over 20,000 youth through speaking, coaching, and mentoring. Has inspired us for years. Welcome to Emmy Time Podcast with your host, Calvin T. Mann, the Encourager.
Please hold your applause, please. Good afternoon. Today's serious conversation is going to come at you in a way that we might least expect. So, for some of the information I'm telling you, this is a show that is for adults, women, men, and we want to make sure that we understand how important this topic is, right? Divorce has been very destructive. To give you a little background in the building, first is the queen. We brought the queen of coaching in, coming off this very hot surviving divorce workshop and seminar this past Friday. So we felt the need to come in and have this conversation about divorce. During this process, she has a surprise for many women who want to get some tools and learn some ways to get past divorce. But also in the building is Bug. L. Bug went to his
I'm here.
album release party. Showed up in time to get some of the juicy, tasty, gotta be careful, right? Music, right? We had so many flavors than everything, and we were able to catch it in time. I'm sure if you like music, you won't be disappointed because in this music is words. Mm-hmm. And it's good words. It's not the type of wording that'll have you, shoot your neighbor, blow up the house.
No.
She bust the window out your car.
No.
It's not the type of music where, you're breaking up. It's music where you're staying together and coming together. So it was really nice, and we enjoyed ourselves. We had my sister-in-law with us who, normally doesn't get to fly in often, right? And y'all know what I mean by fly in on the broom. No, I'm just kidding. She's a sweetie, and she enjoyed herself as well. So with that being said, today is about divorce. Now, being the fact that I've gone through divorce, I'm going to give you a history about divorce, because divorce is what has destabilized many homes and has been the fuel behind the single household, right? So in 1969, the No-Fault Divorce Act was signed by then Ronald Reagan, who would also be the architect of the drug war on drugs. So these are two policies that he architected that destabilized homes and the community, right? So No-Fault Divorce Act and war on drugs, right? Many people in America cites this person as a great president. I've never seen that. And so we're going to continue. But before we kick it off, before I really get into this, divorce is a very serious thing. It's very impactful. Men take their lives after divorce. It's a statistic out here where men who divorced men have a very high level of suicide, right? Usually because what happens is that the government says you're divorced, now you give all your assets over to her, and you are poor. You go down this pipeline, and if you make it, so what? If you don't, that is what the system says, right? But the real dad is the government, right? So We buy into these narratives, and these are the narratives that we have. But I got to kick this off with a story. Came across an interesting story, and I'm going to share to you how we have conditioned everyone against the Father. This is going to be impactful, so bear with me, right? So I come across this story, and the story starts out, this is from a woman. I am a medical doctor, while my husband is a software developer. We both had good jobs until my husband lost his job, and getting another well-paid job became difficult. We both decided that I should travel to Canada for a job. Just to be clear, this is a black father. So it's very difficult when black fathers lose jobs, right? Because now that's another thing that we have to go through to get a job. All right. So I got around, it says, until my husband lost his job, getting another well-paid job became difficult. We both decided that I should travel to Canada for a job. I got around that time. It got around that time when I am stabilized. He said, but she was basically saying I should travel to Canada for the job. It got around that time, and when she explained, when I get stabilized, he would join me with the children. We are blessed with 2 girls. We continued with our lives. In December 2018, I decided to come to Nigeria for the festivities and to celebrate our 20th wedding anniversary. When I arrived, I noticed a tense atmosphere between my daughters and their father. I thought it was just the teenagers' parents' issue, so I ignored it. But when I noticed that my daughters would sometimes be rude to their father, I demanded to know what was going on. This became a matter of concern because my daughters used to adore their father. I tried several times to get my daughters to speak with me, but all they had to say was for me to talk to my husband. I had to ask my husband what was going on. He told me it was nothing he could not handle, and that our daughters were keeping bad company in school. And because of this, he decided to disallow them from going out and attending parties. He drops them in school and created time to pick them up from school. I was happy, as such a strong hand is needed for teenage girls. I then ignored their attitude. Few days would go by when I was to travel back to Canada. I called my daughters to speak with them. After a long talk, they told me that Daddy did not want them to go out because he was having sex with both of them. So the daughters told the mom that he was having sex with both of them. She said I was confused, right? When my husband came back from the office, I confronted him, and they repeated what they told me in his presence. My husband denied vehemently, but the girls insisted that it was happening. I was confused, and I sought counsel of our pastor and his parents. They called our daughters. They said the same thing. I didn't know who to believe, she says. My husband kept begging me to believe him, but I just was not ready to listen because I could not see reason why our children would lie about such. I made arrangements and I took my children. Now let's explain that part right there, right? I made arrangements and I took my children back to Canada with me despite the loans I had to take for the extra costs. So she got the power. She decided that she was the one that was going to take the children, right? That decision right there, carte blanche, right? So I mentioned it to the girl. So while I filed for divorce, I raised my children alone for about 3 years. Then I heard the news that now my ex-husband was getting married to someone else. I mentioned it to the girls, and I expressed how sad I was that a man that would do that to his daughters went scot-free because there's no evidence to push a case. They literally tried to push a case on the dad. I bursted out crying while apologizing to my girls about what he put them through. It was there that they confessed that their father never touched them. That they lied because their father did not give them the freedom to do what they wanted. And they wanted to leave Nigeria. My world shattered. Where do I start from? How do I beg my husband? What do I say? Probably I should have trusted my husband, but I was just trying to be a good mother. I lost a good man. How do I get him to forgive his children and I? Can I still save my home? Please help me. Queen?
Yes. Yes.
So,
That's what you shared is, first of all, very tragic for the whole family, for everybody involved. Second, there is a great deal of healing, and there are some other things that are unstable for that household, for that circumstance to even emerge. For the daughters, were those both of their biological daughters? Or does it say in the story?
yeah, them was his kids.
Okay. So that is, like I said, is very, very tragic. But there's some other dynamics for your daughters to make those kind of accusations and for it to be so easy to do so. So there has to be some other dynamics happening, one with the daughter, between the daughter and the mother. So they had to have seen some other things going on to be able to, make that action okay. So that's it's a difficult circumstance. But the question that she ended on, the question, can she save her family? Can she save her, or can she save face and go back to him? Is that the question you're asking?
No, I just wanted to hear, what you thought, right? So, I understand, right? Because, right, even in your explanation, you were leaning into something was wrong. It had to be wrong with the mom, the whole nine. Within the situation that they saw something.
That's something
right.
That is a
right. No,
true,
I got
true
you.
family issue.
Right,
though.
right. I got you. What you think, Buck?
I know somebody that's gone through that type of situation. So it's that's sticky. It's sad that they have to revert to those type of what's the word I want to
Tactics.
use? Yeah, that's a tactic.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like when young girls use that type of tactic, it was given to them. So whether it's the mom or whether it's some other women that are influential in their lives, when young girls doing that type of thing, especially when nothing actually happened, somebody planted that. You know what I'm saying?
So, I'm sorry, let me interject one thing, too, because this was actually a court case that I sat on where a father, he had two daughters. One she came to court was 15, and she said that she had been molested since she was about 7. And when her younger sister got to that age, he was attempting to start the cycle with the younger daughter, and the older daughter intervened. And by the time that started happening, so they actually slept in the same, the daughters, the older sister would sleep with the younger sister, so that this was her way of protecting her. So she was saying, do it to me, don't do it to her. And so, I mean, the testimony in court, it was a very difficult situation to be in. The father, of course, he didn't testify, but between and so the mother, very much in the same place. She was working. There was a grandmother in the household, and I believe the grandmother was the father's mother. And so she stayed downstairs, kind of stayed out of the way, and did not testify in court. But some of it's just such a difficult thing to see, especially when you know that there are cases like that happen. So in this particular court case, they ended up having to dismiss the case for some technicality along the way, but the daughter continued to say that this happened to her since she was about 7 or 8 years old, and she was 15. And now when she was 15, she much took the attitude that you were talking about, the teenagers. So she was more disrespectful to the father. She had a boyfriend, and she was constantly trying to get away and get to the boyfriend. And so the prosecution, or no, I guess it was the defendants, the attorney that was defending the father said, oh, so your issue is that you just fast now and you just want to do what you want to do, and so you're using this as an excuse. And during the course of all of this going on, the father was writing letters to the mother, apologizing to the mother. And so this was a situation. It was a Hispanic family, so a lot of translation was happening during the course of this trial. So the mother was reading all the letters that the father had sent. He never admitted to doing it, but he never denied it either. So he was just saying, this, I'm sorry for you that you have to go through this, that everybody is going through. He never admitted one way or the other. And so, you see circumstances like this. I just happen to be on a court case that speaks to almost the exact same thing you talked about. So it just made it difficult. So for the people who are deliberating this information, it was tied. I mean, the jury was caught because some people believed it, and some people, you couldn't. You have to have one, without a shadow of a doubt, or without any doubt. If there was doubt, then you had to acquit him.
Okay.
But there was other types of evidence, and the fact that the daughter had tried to talk to the mother, like when she was a little bit younger, and the mother kind of dismissed it. And so that was something that the mother said that maybe I shouldn't have dismissed it. She just kept saying that she didn't want to be home when Dad was home. She didn't want to be home with them. And she's like, well, your grandmother is here. She's like, Grandma's not really doing anything. Grandma's not really watching or seeing, or Grandma's, ignoring what's really happening. So it just, it was a difficult court case. It's difficult to hear it even now. So we do know that things like this do happen. But what we do as a result of it, I think, focusing on how to help the individuals who have experienced that move past that, whether it's the mother, the father, or the children.
Well,
yeah.
So I want to focus on the divorce part.
Mm-hmm.
I was speaking about the lies. I mean, the daughters and the mama was lying.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying I've known somebody that went through the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And the reason the daughters were lying is because it was planted.
Mm-hmm.
They don't come up with that on their own.
Right.
Somebody gave that to them. Like, this is
Right.
You know
So
what I'm saying?
that's part of the conditioning. If you watch TV long
Yeah,
enough,
it's part of the programming.
That's part of the programming. If you watch TV long enough, if you watch anything out there long enough, it would have you against the male. What happens is that tons and tons and tons and tons of males don't come forward
Right. No,
in
they
these
don't.
processes when they're raped, when they're molested. They're not, right? So you got tons of the opposite.
Yes, indeed.
Both create not just tragedy, but both create trauma, violence, anger, suicide, both, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So my point for reading that is the actual conditioning. This is an example of the conditioning against the father.
I think that was a bad example.
That's okay. That's okay.
It's a painful example
Right.
to
It's
use.
okay.
It's a painful
because
example.
You got to remember, I'm on the other side. I have exactly what Boog have. I have several hundred of those accusations of men having touched their own child and having to go to court to fight for it.
Yes.
And to fight for the freedom and to fight for access to their children. There are several.
Yes.
Consistently. One case where not once but twice, every time the father went to go business out of state, that the phone, he would get the call from CPS to the point, right? But they never wanted to deal with the bipolar from the mom. And she still had access and was given full access to the child beyond that, right? So they just in contradiction to, because I understand you being in court and that being up close and personal, but I want to talk about the divorce, right? So she decided to go that route and file for the divorce, right? And she divorced the man. Now, the man then decides to get remarried. And so what happens? When she goes to them, he's knocked off. He out the picture. He's divorced. The daughters they have won. We can do what we want. We have access to whatever we want to do. We don't have to be disciplined. We don't have to follow dad's word. We can go wherever we want because of this situation. So the divorce put them in the situation of a single household and being able to have access to do whatever they wanted to do. Let's get you out the way and let's have access, right? So the divorce. So I want to focus on the divorce because that's our topic, dealing with the divorce, right? And what she said was she wanted help. Please help me, right? Today, you know how to, you're teaching, you're having workshops around surviving divorce.
Yes.
Right? There are some things that, you and I have often talked about because we've both been through it.
Yes, absolutely.
And so in the process, I think we need to have the conversation of what divorce is like. I don't want to give away, because you're doing this special event Tool and Chat later on this weekend for any woman that has gone through a divorce, right? Can get this for free.
Yeah.
So let's help them get on with their life. But prior to that, today I want to discuss some of the symptoms. What are the top causes of divorce?
Wow. I think everybody is pretty much aware that you think it's infidelity in terms of another person, but actually one of the top reasons for divorce is financial infidelity, right? It's lack of trust with finances, people having that conversation, and the things that happen when you don't have an open, committed dialogue around how you manage your money. And there's a reason for that. Calvin mentioned the conditioning, and he mentioned some of the laws that impacted that, but really that has to do with the conditioning that we've had to have, that women have to have. You have to have your little stash. You have to have your little nest egg. You can't totally give it all or share it all or expose all of yourself. You have to have some ways to protect yourself. I think that I don't think that that's not true. I think that it is true, But I think that if you're not having the conversations from the beginning, if you're not building financially together, you can't be married and divided in your finances. It's not going to work. It's not going to set your marriage up and your relationships up for success when you're divided in other areas. And so that conversation, although difficult to have, is essential. So if you haven't had that conversation in your marriage, or your thought of marriage, or you're in a serious committed relationship and even living together, some of those conversations really must be had. So one of the leading reasons for divorce has to do with the financial circumstance. We call it financial infidelity. The second one is actually the broken trust. How trust is broken between a couple. So that trust could be broken in the bedroom. That trust could be broken outside the bedroom and bringing other people in the bedroom. That could be what I call being sneaky. So sneaking around and not really being forthcoming about who you really are, what you really need, what you like, what you don't like. So those kinds of broken trust are things that are not said or not spoken, but are left as expectations. So you may have expectations that somebody will respond or do a certain thing, but they don't actually know, because women typically don't really tell you what we want and what we need. We respond as opposed to have the conversation. We expect that you should know, but that's part of our conditioning as well. That goes back to childhood, where we talk about, girls being given baby dolls. And I like the example about how Barbie Dream House is, right? You want to be successful, and then you have Ken that drives in and drives out every now and again. They're that whole Barbie mindset, that conditioning just around that model for girls growing up has had its destructive components as well.
We're not going to give all that blame on Barbie.
I'm saying it's part of the conditioning.
I understand.
And expectations that girls have of boys.
I got you.
Just like boys who then become men had army men. That I love this one, but a lot of the guys had big wheels and bicycles and go-karts,
right,
so that you could get up and go. It wasn't a family vehicle. It wasn't a family bike that you guys had. Right. It wasn't a family big wheel. It was the competitive nature between boys and being able to come and go as you wanted to. So as a man, that conditioning goes into manhood with you if you're not aware and having a self-check on those things and those dynamics. So both of us have been conditioned to be separated.
Right.
And not be a full constructive unit. That's what we say verbally, but all of our teaching and all of our upbringing has been about, be competitive. You have to compete in this world. You have to be better than, and so I think all of those systems have conditioned us to be separate as opposed to a unit. And so those are things that we have to make sure that we're overcoming.
Well, yeah, and that is not. It just didn't stop there. Then they hit you with the family movies. But you were absent. They'll hit you with the shows, but you were absent. Then when you got time, it's your turn to produce and show movies. You do the same thing, right? T.D. Jakes, his movies was all about the turnaround of the family going through. But how many movies T.D. Jakes get, right? And this is why I was telling you that I cited Will Smith, because Will Smith probably pound for pound was the most important fatherhood actor in our generation, period.
True.
Of any actor. When we get into the movies that Will Smith has played the father, which is why I advocate the whole Will Smith and fatherhood piece. And will advocate even more, right? Because that example is what was needed. So, again, what you're saying is also true about the conditioning. Mm-hmm. And divorce, that's also part of the conditioning, right? So, because you are apart, what are you strong in? Telling somebody how to get away. What is your music telling you? Telling you somebody how to get away. What are your images about? we've come up with terms. This is how powerful the African American community is. You've come up with terms, so many different terms and different meanings for words that they call it ebonics. Right? So you created a whole nother language. You're so creative, but you don't create the unity. You create the separation. You are now
Division.
the division where you're separated. You're completely separated, and everything you do is about her versus him. Like, that is what's mind blowing. But the divorce piece, like you said, it's also part of the conditioning. I shared this before. A classmate of mine, their family haven't had a divorce in 95 years. The last divorce they had was 95 years ago. And what she said was, we will fight, drag, carry, hang in there, hold on for that marriage, because it's so important to our legacy of being one.
So, and I'm just going to give it just a little bit that we talked about in the workshop that I think would be helpful in this conversation.
We're not giving away no solutions, Heather.
That's not what I'm saying.
Okay.
All right. So when we talk about marriage and the ritual of the marriage, there are witnesses. So when you mentioned that, I thought immediately for that family to have been divorce free for 95 years, they had to have that village, those witnesses holding that marriage together, or those marriages together from throughout those generations. Because 90 years, you figure that's probably about a good 5 generations, right? 5 or 6 generations.
Okay.
And so that means that they weren't doing it alone. And I think when we talk about maintaining a relationship, there has to be some other components that are inside that relationship and constantly evolving inside that relationship. But there also have to be these safeguards around that relationship.
Let's talk about it.
All right. So one of those safeguards you would think would be the first 2 expected safeguards for your marriage should have been the person that married you, whoever was your officiant. The second would be those people who stood up with you as witnesses, because they signed a contract. They signed their name to saying that they are not only witnessing, but they're standing in the gap for you in your marriage. So that those witnesses are partly responsible for the success of that marriage, to make sure that union stays together. So you have that support on her side. She's called a maid of honor or a matron of honor. And you have that support on his side, which is considered his best man, right? And then the next level of support are bridesmaids and groomsmen. So you're supposed to have at least those around you. And the next level, who say that they give they give the bride to the groom, or the families to one another, are the parents, the siblings. That's the next level of witnesses that is also responsible for the success and maintaining that marriage relationship. And then the next level beyond that are the friendships and those who are sitting in the audience to witness and support and dance at your reception and eat all your food and drink all your liquor. That's the next level. All of these people, that's the ritual that we are practicing without the values that make up those rituals. Like, it's not just a party. You're not just ingesting people's food. These are rituals, and rituals have deeper meaning. And we don't get to understand the deeper responsibility. And if you listen to the vows, if you listen to the officiant, even before he gets to the whole I do, and he asks people, and then after the fact, the officiant asks people to stand up and salute the bride and groom, to applaud them, to encourage them, to send them that good. These are all components of a ritual that we all have partaken in at one point or another. Even from your flower girls and your junior bridesmaids, that ritual is designed to help them to secure, one, it's for fertility for the bride and for the groom. The second reason that ritual is played out is because you're grooming the junior bridesmaids, what do you call them, the ring bearer. You're grooming them for marriage.
Okay.
That is part of the conditioning. So I'm saying, what I'm saying is that we have all of these rituals that, one, we don't understand. We don't understand our role or our obligation in the whole process, even just as witnesses. It wasn't just for fun and games, so we don't have the value behind those rituals. It's just a party. It's just an event. It's just an activity. And that is not what it is designed for. It is designed spiritually to make sure that these things are in place, and physically to demonstrate everything is a symbol for what the real meaning of that marriage and the role of everybody there has. But we don't educate each other on that, so we don't recognize our role as the village.
So you just stole all of that.
I stole that from who?
Everything out of what I was about to, right? So, you just take the words out of a person's mouth, right? But the one missing ingredient to all that you have said, right? Mm-hmm. The real culprit, and you touched on it, is that people don't know what a covenant really means. We go into these marriages, the church doesn't do it. The preachers doesn't, the officiants doesn't do it. Therefore, they're part of the sabotage as well, because you should understand going in. Once I discovered Numbers and Numbers 30 and the definition and the words on covenant, then you realize the covenant is not just the words that you speak, but the words that your spirit takes in. See, that covenant, that's what bonds it for you to become as one. We have a tendency, we love the idea of getting married. We love the process. We ignore what it really means to the man, because the man kind of understands, he kind of got an idea that this is it.
What's this is it?
This is it. Like
this is the only woman. This is it.
It's all of that. It's all of that, right? So men, that's why we don't get all excited about it, right? Because guess what? We have been conditioned that this is only for her, because we didn't value him, right? And so when we don't see what the value is to him, right, all we know is it's for her. You see? And so then we go.
There's a reason.
That's how most men.
That's how we say it, right? And men are also saying, men, just to put this out there, men are also saying they don't want to get married. Why? Because they gonna lose. If something go wrong, they lose everything, because these are not the same covenant hawking people in relationships. You can't make a mistake. A man can't make a mistake, because everyone is conditioned. If he makes a mistake, bury him. It's time to end. Get over here. You know what I mean? We're going to execute you.
He make a mistake, he's ruined the family.
He's ruined the family.
Well, no, it depends on the mistake.
Hold on. Even if he
depend on the mistake.
He doesn't have to make a mistake for him to be buried.
Well, no, he don't have to make a mistake. That's the point
that was just read. He didn't have to make a mistake. He could be in his disciplines, and we not. Oh yeah.
No.
Oh, yeah.
So
I don't like the way he talks to me when he says things. Oh, I didn't like the way he did. No, I don't want to spend the money that way. No, I want to get the money. I got a great one. I'm going to give you this. This is a juicy one, right? We nursed, and I'm not going to say names or anything, right? I see your credit. We nursed your credit all the way back to where it's 8. It's an 8 with me. Your sister called. Want to go shopping. We getting prepared for some major moves. You go shopping with your sister. Your sister convinces you to get a credit card because you got an 800 credit score. You spend the bread on your sister. When the husband is upset and finds out about it, a couple of weeks later, you go to the husband, ask the husband, you want to leave. You want to get your own place. The husband obliges, purchase a home for you to be away from the husband, help you get the home. It's in your name, everything. The 800 credit score then is dwindled. You're not taking care of the home. The home is worth almost $200,000. The community is on the head. You're not taking care of the home. You're not taking care of the house. The credit is going down. The roof is bad. What the husband has to do, right? Because the husband is still honoring his marriage. They didn't file for divorce. He rescues the home from foreclosure. Bring you back in with his children, whom you took away from him because you wanted this particular freedom. When we had a whole nother plan. Those types of interruptions in someone else's home will cause a divorce. Right? Right?
There are a lot of things in that circumstance. You mentioned that
so we
need
still
some work.
We still are married till to this day. But if it was reversed, it's no doubt about a divorce. It's no doubt about whatever the case may be. And in some cases, I can't say reverse because it depends on the people, right? But my whole point is divorce is such a demonic thing. And the things about marriages and everything else, it's because you're outside of your covenant. I tell men all the time, as soon as you step outside of your covenant, the covenant that you made with this person, as soon as you step outside of that covenant, chaos begins immediately in your home. It's the first place that chaos is coming. It's coming to your door. You could just about sit still, and if anything goes wrong outside the covenant, you could sit in your house, you could say, what you done did? We ain't had this. Because when you break that covenant, that peace, it goes a different way. And this is from experience. Right? It goes a different way. So the covenant piece is the piece that the church and the officiants are not covering in premarital for that to be the case. In Numbers 30, you can pull it up, book, and read Numbers 30 so you know these are the things that you are held accountable to as a man in a covenant and as a woman in a covenant. And that spiritual piece is not just, because God, God said, God so loved the world. No, that's not it. It's the fact that you understand that this is a covenant and you cannot break that bond. It will destroy you.
So let me add another layer to when you're talking about covenant, because I do want to get to some things about divorce too. The first thing is when you talk about a covenant and when you make that covenant, it's very important that people recognize that when the officiant said between you, him, and God is what that covenant is made up of. So that means that you can go to God when you can't go to your spouse. And if you're not doing that, you're not activating the promises and the securities in that covenant.
Come on.
So you have to, if you put your marriage under a spiritual covenant. Now, some people, maybe just going through the process and it's just, they don't quite understand what that means. But so that's why my workshop is called Surviving Divorce. But the other part of that message is mending a broken covenant. You can mend the covenant if you have the right tools and you have the right mindset. Because you're a spiritual being, because the rituals that you engaged in as a couple put you under a spiritual law, then the covenant that you make is that spiritual covenant as well. There's a physical covenant when you sign the paper. However, that when you sign the paper, you are under man's law. So you put your marriage under both man's law and spiritual law. So when you're going through a divorce, and this was a really important question that I asked the judge, my second divorce, I asked them, why does it take so much? Why do you have to go through friend of the court? Why do you have to go through your assets? And why do you have to divide your assets? And why do you have to do all of these things, all of these motions, all of these signatures, all of this back and forth with the court? And the judge called me forward and told me that one of the reasons why you go through this painful process of undoing is that you actually are undoing all the vows that you've made when you were in your courtship and when you came into your marriage, or going into your marriage and then after your marriage, that you're undoing all of those promises that you made to one another, the vows or the oath that you took to one another. You have to physically undo them all. So that is the motion that you're going through. You're going through the motions of undoing what you already did. And so when I heard that and I started to reflect on really what that meant, how intricate of a message that was, and why it felt so divisive having to go to the court. It felt shameful. It felt depressing. It was nothing joyous about going through that process. I mean, you feel like everything that you did for your marriage is now criminalized, but all of that is intentional. All of that is intentional. It's an intimidating process. If you don't have a lawyer, if you're not knowledgeable about the process yourself to walk through it, or somebody to guide you through it, it's even more devastating. It's stressful. It's all of those things that draw out the very worst in people. And I'm not saying that there aren't circumstances that, dictate one person having to have this experience. But what I'm saying is the experience itself is you have to recover from, because it is dividing, but it's also divisive. So as for people who are going through, and why it's so painful is because you have to overcome that broken trust of even the divisiveness of the term of divorce, the process of divorce. It is divisive and it's devastating. All of these things are intentional because it's supposed to be hard for you to get through it so that you don't keep repeating it. Not that you don't repeat the marriage, but that you learn the lessons from the marriage so that you don't repeat the same things throughout a divorce. So I just want to go. Did you want to comment on that, Calvin?
No.
Okay. So I do want to make just a couple of points that the process of divorce, for anyone who's engaged in that process, knows that it's a painful process. And one of the reasons why it's painful is because it is similar to grief. So some of the stages in divorce that you experience are some of the same stages in grief and loss. So where there is a loss of life, there's a loss of the completion of a life, and now you're pulling it apart. So you're physically and spiritually pulling a relationship apart, and so you're feeling the pain of that loss. And some of the symptoms that are common to grief, that are common to divorce, the first and most important one is shock. It's unbelievable that whatever circumstance happened to put you in this space. And the second stage is anger. You're pissed off. So you take that out on the person. And because it puts you off balance, because now you're divided. So that's part of where your emotional instability starts to emerge. And some people experience that on top of other mental health challenges. So in addition to whatever mental health challenges we already are having, this is on top of that. And so for a lot of people, it pushes you over the edge. It pushes you beyond the point where you can be rational. So you start to make irrational decisions. So when you're angry, a certain part of your mental capacity shuts down. you don't have the capacity to make good decisions, rational decisions based on health or wealth or anything like that. You're making irrational decisions. And that's a lot of times with what you see how women respond to men. That's why they do certain terrible things, negotiating their children, or being obsessive or abusive or divisive, and coming up with all these other ways to make him pay for me being divorced, pay for what happened between us. And that's what we have a tendency to do because we're angry. And so the longer you're stuck in that anger, the more irrational behaviors we tend to have. No, you can't see your kids. No, you can't do this. No, you can't have that. No, I won't do this. But what I will give you, for a lot of women who go back and forth and use sex as a tool, is still divisive, it's still controlling, and it also will still come back to you because it's still about reciprocity. How you handle yourself, you're still accountable for reaping that way that you've handled it. So, if you don't see anything else in this process, and typically it makes you blinded because remember, this is not when you're working in anger and from anger, it is not a rational person that you're dealing with. They're not rational. And unless a person works through that process, the decisions from that point forward will not be rational. We're surprised when we see people who are violent. We're surprised when we see people who start stalking and who start doing these irrational things. That's because they're mentally unstable. Because the divorce itself, because it is a divisive process, has pushed you over the edge. And so sometimes it can go deeper the longer it goes unhealed, the longer it goes unaddressed. And this is not something that you can do alone. You need support when you're going through this. If you're trying to do that alone, you have no new information to add. That's why you seek counseling, therapy, your coach, your whoever you see as your source. But you have to get help if you're going through a divorce. You cannot go through that alone. So don't try to survive it alone, because the more you do that, because you're not thinking rationally. And again, if you already have mental challenges, mental health challenges, that now this is just going to exacerbate that health challenge. And it's also physical. So whatever physical ailment that you may be sustaining, it's going to also impact that. So it's not going to make that illness better. It's going to aggravate it because, again, the parts of your body that you need to be functioning and whole are not functioning and are not whole.
Thank you.
Yes. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
You got to rope her in because you know what I mean.
Okay.
But I understand, right? I understand exactly what you're saying. Hopefully, you understand. What I need you to do is talk about Saturday.
Okay.
Because I think it's important that we tell some people, we tell some women who have gone through divorces, walking around here, and need those couple of things that you're going to offer Saturday for free. I just really appreciate the fact that you can really do this thing and help so many women who want to be helped. This is for women who want to be helped.
So during our tool and chat, which is our free workshop coming up on Saturday, part of some of the conversation that we're going to have is what we just talked about. But I'm going to share with you two important tools that you need to really start and jumpstart this process. And I'm going to show you how to apply those tools. That's the most important piece of it, that you get the new information. So if you've heard me talk about this before, there's a process of change. And so some of what we need to identify the change kind of comes after the fact that you have the tools. So the process of change is in 5 steps. The first one is new information. And so that's what you're going to get on Saturday. The second step in the process of change is appreciation. So you have to value the information that you're given in order to apply it. So if you miss step 1 or step 2, then it's a wash. So I really need people who are serious about moving through this process of divorce and all of the ramifications that come along with it. And if you're stuck, it doesn't matter if you divorce this year or 5 years ago or 10 years ago, in that space within you where you're stuck, you're still stuck in that stage. So that means it's still that backup of everything we just talked about. Whatever stage of divorce grief that you're in is where you are, and you haven't moved through that process successfully. And so we need to make sure that we move through that process successfully, because one of those steps is how you repair broken trust. That is holding so many women back, and that may be one of the tools that you get on Saturday, or it might be in the next workshop. So just make yourself available. It's just for 1 hour. It's going to be Saturday morning at 11 o'clock, from 11 to 12. So it's a change from the morning to the afternoon. It's a good time of day where mentally you're ready to hear it, and physically you're ready to apply it. So if you're in, you'll be able to go to my website after midnight, or so by tomorrow. You'll be able to go to the website, register for that free tool and chat, and so that you can get on the course to healing and mending that you need to.
So awesome. That's why we brought you in, wanted you here, wanted your input, and that's why we keep you close, because you always are bringing the most powerful solutions. So thank you, and Boog, for another show. I'm looking forward to taking these to another level. We'll talk about it. Anyway, as you heard today, divorce is so hard. It's a very hard thing. Sometimes we don't get back up. It'd be so difficult. And we're asking that you and the community and the culture, that we become more responsive and caring and protective of one another, especially our children, because the divorce hurts and destroys a lot of our children, and it destroys a lot of our families. And therefore we have these many complexing issues that are always taking and taking and taking. And there was a reason why this was put in place. Let's go the other way and put your family first. Fight back with love. Fight back with encouragement. Fight back with peace. Fight back with understanding. Fight back with listening. Fight back with learning. But more importantly, fight back for your family. My name is Calvin T. Mann. God bless you and encourage me. I'm young. Peace.